Hello everyone, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag. I am your replacement host Kelly, and let's get right into it. Hello everyone, welcome back to Under the Checkered Flag. Today I am your host Kelly. I am filling in for Kate because she's decided to take a sabbatical per se. She decided to take a break and let me take the reins because obviously I am just the more trustworthy host. Sorry, pause. She loves you really. So today we don't actually have too much to talk about. It's mostly just our predictions for the upcoming Austrian Grand Prix weekend. But first we have the tiniest little bit of housekeeping, and that is that Fabio DiGianantonio has re-signed with Ducati on a VR46 on an official bike. Now, I am certainly happy about this. I mean, I did expect it to go to Marco Bezzecchi, but he has moved to Aprilia, so it just felt a bit inevitable that it would be going to Fabio Di Gianantonio. However, this is a contract for 2 years. So, pause. Do you think this is going to be a case where Fermin is actually stuck on a year-old bike for 2 years?
Yeah, I can see it playing out that way, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. He's still quite young. I think he's 19, 20, somewhere around there. So having that extra year on an older bike could be good for him because honestly don't feel like he'll adapt and be extremely fast straight away. So having not having the pressure of being a factory rider on his shoulders like straight away, I feel like that could help him in the long run.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. I feel like it comes down to a point where he needs to be able to adapt to a new bike. So obviously, like a newer, faster bike. So obviously, being on a year-old bike is the best case scenario for him for 2 years. Not really too sure because then it could be a situation of he's not performing, he's not doing well, he's already a year in. Why is he so slow? And then people forget that, like, he'd obviously be on a year-old spec, but in the long run, I don't think it's going to make that big of a problem. I mean, like in the next 2 years, some people are going to probably leave the sport anyway, and that will give him leeway to get a like year's bike. But for now, I think it's just the best choice. I mean, they're not going to give him an official Ducati and then leave Fabio on his own. So I could see why it happened. It just doesn't mean I'm happy about it. And this is actually going back to the British Grand Prix a few weeks ago, where they did the retro liveries and the weirdly good retro livery intro. I mean, I want that to be just like the year long intro, but that might just be me. But the question I want to ask you is, what was your least favorite retro livery out of them all?
I honestly, there's not really one that I majorly disliked, but if I had to pick one, I'd probably agree with what Pekka Bagnaia said on the Ducati. Just the amount of sponsors on it does kind of get in the way of some of the things that could make the livery a little bit better. But yeah, again, I think overall they were all pretty good.
I'd have to agree with that. Honestly, the one I was like personally most let down by was Pramac. I mean, I expected I do understand where the concept was coming from, and like it was nice, but for a retro livery, I expected something better. I mean, it was just boring. Like I didn't see anything really good come out of it. I was just kind of sat there and I was like, oh, okay. Like I was really let down, and then with the actual official Ducati at the same time, it was just boring. I mean, there's not really much else I can say about that. I did love obviously the Yamaha and the Honda. Like for like I said in TikTok, for such crap bikes, they make amazing liveries, and it's a shame we didn't get to see them much because they weren't really fighting anywhere near the field, were they? So it is unfortunate, but you just have to kind of get up and get over it. And yeah, so those are our least favorite liveries. Okay, so with that little bit of housekeeping and retro liveries out of the way, we're going to move straight into our predictions because not really much left to talk about. So Kate has thankfully sent us in her predictions for the weekend. So we might start with her for Moto 3, and for Moto 3 going in the way I normally do it, we have Colin Vire in P1. I know, everyone calm down. She's not turning into me. She could never be me in that regard. So she is Colin Vara P1, which makes me very happy. She has Ivan Ortola in P2 and David Alonso in P3. I would expect her, knowing how David Alonso has been performing over the past couple of weeks, to put him in P2 at least. But maybe I'm just being too hopeful. And then she has Diogo Moreira as her reserve. So, Pause, what are your Moto3 predictions?
Just like to point out the fact that she's done it again with Moreira being in Moto2 this year, but ignoring that.
Oh my god! Oh no! Okay. Who should we put in as her reserve? Who do you think?
Um,
Who would Kate like? Should we throw Holgado in there? We won't be too mean to her because Holgado has been coming back and he's decent around Austria. Yeah, we will. Okay. So, unfortunately,
throw Scott Ogden in there, I
huh?
reckon. Throw Scott Ogden in.
Oh no, right. We won't be too mean to Kate. We'll be nice and we'll put Danny Holgado as her reserve. So, going back over that with the little blunder, we have Colin Vara P1, yay. Ivan Ortola P2, David Alonso P3, and not Diogo Moreira. We have Danny Holgado as her reserve. Okay. And moving on to PozzA, what are your Moto3 predictions?
Yeah, I've done a very similar thing to pretty much the whole rest of the year. Starting from P3, I've gone Danny Holgado just because he was up there in the sort of race win fight last year, and this is normally one of the tracks he's solid at. P2, I've gone Ivan Ortola because he did show a bit of pace at the end of the race last year, and in the last few races has just been exceptional. And P1, David Alonso, again slightly based off of last year, just because of the way he sort of cut through the front pack to go from fifth to first in a couple of laps last year before crashing out. But I feel like with the extra experience he has now, he'll be right up there, definitely fighting for the podium. And
Technical difficulties. Um, we'll move straight on to my Moto3 predictions, which start off with David Alonso. I do love myself some Colin Vire, everyone knows that, but David Alonso is just too fast for anyone to stop. So he is my number one. I put Colin Vire P2 because he finished P4 in his rookie season last year here, so I'm hoping he could do a bit better, knowing he has a bit more experience on this track now. Third, I have Daniel Holgado because I think, as everyone agrees, he improved over the last race a little bit, and he's normally very solid around Austria, so I'm hoping that will be the case. And then, as my reserve, I have Ivan Artola. And in the fashion that we normally do it, last goes first. So we move straight on to Moto2 for me. First, I think anyone can guess. I have Fermin Aldeguer, even though he didn't have the best race last year, we could say. I hold faith. I mean, it might just be like depressing. It might just be depressing faith at this point, but there's still faith there. So I have Fermin Aldeguer P1. I have Jake Dixon second, obviously because of his race win recently, and the fact that he's pretty solid. He's like, if you want to get some points, he's a decent rider to go for. Ayagura because he has just absolutely jumped up the field in the last couple of races, and that man wants that championship, and I am here to witness it. And then my reserve is Celestino Vietti because, as he did win here last year, I don't think he's been on form enough to warrant him having a race win this year, but that might just be me. So we will move straight on to Kate's Moto2 predictions, which, thank God, do not involve any Moto3 or MotoGP riders. So starting off with first, we have Ayagura. I think she feels the same as me. The man is in the title fight and he wants it. Then we go to Sergio Garcia in second, which I did not put there. I don't know if I have faith enough in him this weekend, but maybe, like I said, delusion, really bad delusion. In third, she has Tony Arbolino, which is delusion. That's delusion, I think, in my opinion. But I do want Tony to do well, so if Kate's the one to make him do well, then I am happy. And then in fourth, as a reserve, she has Joe Roberts, which I think is pretty solid. Nothing wrong with that. Pretty good lineup. What about you, Puz?
Yeah, I've gone with Sergio Garcia in P3 just because of the way he went from essentially last to first, or not to first, but last to sort of the podium in the last race, ended up in fourth. So I think he'll have a strong race. P2, I've gone Celestino Vietti just because in the last few races, with how the WP suspension bikes have improved, he's been looking a lot more solid, and obviously won here last year, beating Pedro Acosta, of all people. So I think it'll be another strong race for him. And P1, I've got on Aigura because I recall him being in a race win fight here at this track at one point. I can't remember what year, but he's also been on form recently, so I think he'll be up there. And as my reserve, I've gone Fermin Aldeguer just because with Fermin it's a bit hit or miss, but I don't think it's a bad choice for a reserve in case something goes wrong.
Okay, and what about your MotoGP sprint? What's going on there?
I feel like I've gone a bit basic for this, but it's all good. I've gone Pekka Bagnaia in P3 just because, again, he doesn't seem like the best rider in the sprints, but he's normally around about the podium. P2, after last week's sprint and main race double, I've gone Ine Bastianini to have another strong weekend. And the shock of the century, Jorge Martin P1, just because he normally has a history of being pretty strong here, and it's a sprint race, so who else am I going to put realistically?
Fair enough. So moving on to my MotoGP sprint predictions, I went also pretty basic. I think it's kind of obvious who is in the fight and who is not. I have actually put Pecco Bagnaia in P1 for my MotoGP sprint. I know how that went last time. I think we all know how that went last time, but I still have faith. I mean, the man is fast. I have faith. Jorge Martin, I have P2. Like I said, demoted the sprint merchant. I do like Jorge, and he's been all right the last few races. Not to the point where I'd like to see him, but he's been there. So P2, I think, is the best place to put him now. And in third, I have Brad Binder. Um, I know it might seem weird, but last year he had a very good result here, and I have faith that the KTM's are going to do something and come back. So I have him in P3, and then as my reserve, I have Marc Marquez. Solid, might not get a podium, but points are on the table, so I'll take it. And then we will move on to Kate's sprint predictions, which is numero uno, Pecca Bagnaia. She agrees with me. Number two, Jorge Martin. Like I said, the guy is fast. He's always going to be near or behind Pecco, so sometimes ahead. So it's good to have him P2. P3, Pedro Acosta. Not too sure about that yet, but I mean, he did, I believe, come second last year in Moto2, so he could do something here. I don't think it's going to be a podium, but maybe I'm wrong. And then as a reserve, she has Marc Marquez. Then moving straight on to MotoGP race for Kate, we have Jorge Martin P1. She has more faith in him than I do because the last time I tried to do that, he crashed. So I'm not sure I have the kind of faith there. P2, she has Enea Bastianini, which I get. Enea has had like a huge comeback, and I can definitely see why she's put him there. And then P3, once again, Pedro Acosta. Do I see division? Yeah. Do I think it's going to be like, do I think it's going to come to fruition? Maybe not, but I'm not here to judge. And then as a reserve, she has Pekka Bagnaia. Pekka Bagnaia not on the podium for the race. Doesn't sound very likely to me, but I like her optimism, so we'll go with that. What about you, Poz?
I did miss my reserve for the sprint, but I've also gone Marc Marquez. But apart from that, moving on to the main race, I've gone the exact same combination of riders, just in a slightly different order. P3, I've gone Enea Bastianini. P2, Pecco Bagnaia. And I've gone Jorge Martin to do the sprint and main race double, with, again, Marquez as my reserve.
Fair enough. Mine is once again pretty basic, not much to it. For my P1 for the MotoGP race, I have Pecca Bagnaia. Who would have guessed that? Not me. So he is my number one, obviously. Then second, I have Jorge Martin. Kind of like the 2023 championship, Pecco P1, Martin P2, Pecco P1, Martin P2. You get the picture. So that's how I went with that. And then P3, Ivan Bastianini, because I do have faith in the guy. The guy has had a comeback, and I want him to win again. So for safety, I have him just on the podium in P3, but in my heart, I want him to win. And then as my reserve, Marc Marquez, solid for points, might not get a podium, but I can see him finishing in the top 5. So that is all of our predictions, I believe. And by the looks of it, that is everything we needed to cover. So anything anyone wants to talk about, or are we done?
Pretty sure that's everything important.
Grand. Thank you very, very much.
Hi guys, it's Kelly here, just literally making a post-recording note whilst I'm editing. I just wanted to thank anyone who actually managed to stick around and listen to me and Poz struggle for about 15 or 16 minutes whenever this gets uploaded. So if you did listen, thank you very much, and we will hopefully see you for our next episode when Kate returns and I can calm down again.